Okay, so even by my standards, this week's sharing on Zoom was an epic fail. So now you're getting a quick overview of the class content with just me. So apologies for that. This is our first topic on the Building Better Careers series, so number 5 in the Total Masterclass series. And we're shifting now from our physiology and taking care of ourselves physically to then our career aspirations and how to get a little bit more strategic about the frameworks we put in place for our career progression. We're rethinking promotion from 2 angles, and this is what I see come up most frequently with one-on-one coaching clients at the moment. One is, I feel stuck, and how do I position for the next promotion? Because we fundamentally feel like we want to go up, we're ready to go up, but we keep hitting a ceiling. And very often that's because we're told we're not thinking strategically enough, or we don't have enough influence, etc. So we're thinking about, is it really the role for you? And if so, what do you need to do, and who do you need to be to get that role? And then the other angle, which I very often find people come to me with, is 6 months into a new role, they're really not loving it and they're genuinely questioning whether it's the right role for them or not. And that means we need to take a look at it. We need to reframe. We need to think about, again, what identity lag do we have from what got us there and what do we need to be to get us to where we need to be as well. So we're going to take a look at this from both angles as we walk through these slides. So the first thing I would say is most people don't really think about whether they genuinely want a promotion. What they want is not the role itself, it's what it gives them. So that may be external validation, it may be financial security and stability, which is very, very valid. It could be more creative freedom or perceived autonomy because they feel like the more senior you get, the more say they will have in things. And we're going to talk about how that can sometimes play out. So the first thing to do is get very clear on what you want and why, and then whether a promotion is the right way to get to that outcome. Because sometimes it may not be, sometimes it may be role crafting or finding something outside of your day-to-day work. So we really need to think about, is this genuinely what I want? And if it is, awesome, amazing, we're going to set you up for success in that. But first of all, think about whether this is really what you want and what trade-offs you'll be making to get that. The other thing worth calling out is promotion is the only made career decision we're expected to say yes to immediately. So if it was changing organizations, even in terms of life decisions, when we're thinking about where we live, who we marry, everything else, we take some time to think about that. But it's almost immediately assumed that if the promotion is on offer, we should take it. It can be very, very hard to push back on social pressure to refuse that role or say, I need more time to think about that role. But sometimes that short-term pain can have much greater benefits longer term or even medium term if you're more strategic about the direction you want to go into. We always assume that if we're good at our job, then the next level, it should be the natural next step and it should feel like progress. However, often we're at a level in our roles where we have unconscious competence. We can really see the value we're adding and the outcomes are tangible. Whereas the next role is going to have a steep learning curve. It's going to require different skill sets. Often it will be a shift from being an individual contributor to a manager or a manager of a team to a manager of multiple teams or a leader of multiple teams. And there's going to be a fairly significant identity shift in those. So while we assume moving upwards should feel good, often there is a growth stretch zone and some challenge around that as well. So being exceptional as an individual contributor does not automatically mean we're going to be great at managing a team of individual contributors. And this is a mistake many organizations make by automatically promoting people who are good at what they do, but not necessarily putting the frameworks and the support around them to give them the management and leadership skills they need to take that next step. Likewise, being a brilliant manager, so helping people execute, understanding metrics, knowing how to deliver through people, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be an excellent leader at the first instance, which can be a lot more ambiguous, less target driven, less tangible. So again, it's just about making sure it's a very valid thing to aspire to achieve these roles, but making sure you've got the right support infrastructure and you know what you're walking into as you make these transitions. It's worth calling out that many of us these days have what I would call a squiggly career. So it doesn't always mean that your progress is upward. And I think we're going to see this increasingly. If you think about the skill sets and the character traits you're building, those can be much more valuable in terms of building your future personal brand and your future proposition for employers, as opposed to going on a straight line up and really specializing in one area. So I talked a little bit about clients who come to me after 6 months or so, and they thought this was going to be great, but really they're finding that they're on the verge of burnout. The workload is too much. They're really stressed. They don't feel like they're being effective in the roles. And very often this pain is not about the workload itself. It's actually about the identity lag. So they can no longer do all of the work that they used to do and that they are known for being very good at, and they take pride at being good at. They now have to achieve that through others. They have to be a lot more strategic, they have to delegate a lot more, and they have to apply judgment and direction and operate in areas of ambiguity a great deal more. So there's a lag as you transition from one identity to the other and find the ways in which you can prove your sense of value through the new identity and be able to really grieve for the old one and let that past go. So a promotion is not effectively a reward for what you've done. It's a contract for where you're going. So it's people who have faith in you saying, I think you can fulfill this new role. But it does mean, as I said, we have to undergo this big identity shift and this transition from what got you here, which is being excellent at what you do, to what will get you there, which is bringing other people along. Now, inevitably, as we get higher up in an organization, we get lonelier. There's a lot more competition. Our peers aren't necessarily as collaborative as they used to be, and things are a lot more complex. We have to make decisions with a lot less information, and a lot more of our job is about strategic negotiation and influencing and relationship management, also known as politics, as it is being excellent and having deep product expertise. So it genuinely is a valid choice to consider whether this is something that you want to do or not. And we often find that we're moved up in organizations. We always say yes to the promotion, but we can then find that we're actually in a role that doesn't fulfill us or isn't aligned with our purpose. And that's why we're asking ourselves these questions now. The higher we go, the less value comes from what we're physically delivering. So less tangible outcomes, less things we can track at the end of the week or the month or the quarter, and the more from the judgment and the decisions we're making and how we're empowering others. So how we're absorbing the pressure from above, how we're translating that into the requirements of our people, and how we're empowering them to then deliver on those objectives. That can be a really sharp transition for someone who is used to being able to point to their metrics and demonstrate the value that they're adding to the organization. The more senior we get, the more increasingly abstract our deliverables get. So we're operating in times of ambiguity. A lot of our success is determined how we can bring others along with us and gain and garner the support of our peers or our seniors. And a lot of it is something you really just can't touch, feel, see, or demonstrate. It takes time. And we also have to build confidence in the fact that this is genuinely a skill that we are flexing, building like any muscle, and that it's delivering for the organization. For many high performers, this feels like losing the superpower of what got them there, and that can be super disorienting. So we need to apply some self-compassion here, but we also need to be eyes wide open about what we're walking into. So as I said, every promotion is not a reward for past behavior. It is going to be a series of trade-offs. You need to consider what kind of person you're going to need to be successful. And you can look around, you can see where people are doing this elsewhere in an organization or other organizations and make the call on whether that's the kind of person that you want to be. You're going to trade autonomy. So we think, oh, we'll have more power as a boss, but actually the more senior we get, the more stakeholders, the more politics, the more negotiation required. So actually we find that we have less autonomy than we felt we did. And we have to face off and deliver decisions sometimes that we don't necessarily agree with as well. So we're trading a lot of our autonomy. We're trading the craft that we used to be able to deliver and now delivering that through others. We're trading our time because it will absorb more of our time with all of this stakeholder management. We'll be asked and invited to every single meeting, whether you actually need to be there to make a decision or whether people want you to be there. And you're going to trade simplicity. So you're continually trading in more complex environments now. So you're going to have to get used to ambiguity, change, and making decisions with maybe 70% of the information as opposed to 100% or having someone to tell you exactly what to do. None of this makes it a bad thing. We just need to understand what we're going into, and we just need to make sure we have the right scaffolding around us for this transition into more senior roles. So very often what breaks people isn't the role itself. And we often ask, and I'll come to this in a moment, like, can I do the job? It's not the job itself. It's the price that we weren't aware we were paying. So the hidden cost will be time outside of work. Where we invest that energy now is going to pay a short-term price, certainly in the first 6 months as we really get up that learning curve and get used to a role. We also feel more pressure about the people who are working for us. So they are dependent on our success. They need us to be able to work with those stakeholders to give them the resources they need, and they need us to absorb the pressure above them so they can be effective as well. So we feel a lot of weight both from the top, but also from the bottom up as well. Again, struggling with this doesn't mean that we're failing. It's very, very natural. This is why we're talking about it. But if you didn't know they were coming, this can feel like a bit of a slap because it's coming out of the blue. As I said, can I do this job is almost always the wrong question. We can learn capabilities. Everyone here is a high performer. So we know that we can acquire the skills to deliver it. It's more a question of, do we want to do the job? So what does the job require me to do? Who does it require me to be? And is that someone I want to be in the future? So it's really important to sit down and think about, what are my days? And I would even extrapolate this out to, what are my weeks going to look like? What do I have to give up outside of work or even within work in terms of my identity? What kind of person succeeds here? And is that the kind of person I want to be? And then what does success cost in this role? So not just your time, but your energy, your relationships, those things that you're giving up and putting to one side. Are you willing to pay that, whether that's a short-term price or a medium or a long-term price? Really important for us to have done this before we say yes to a new role, or even before we start applying to new roles, because it's important to weigh up what matters most to us. There will always be a lot of pressure, whether that be from family members, friends, within the organization, wherever it may be, that if a promotion is offered, there will be an enormous amount of pressure to say yes. But saying no can be strategic, and sometimes positioning this in the way of it being strategic and explaining why and what else you are valuing more and what else you are pursuing more is the far more strategic but more challenging route, rather than saying yes and realizing a few months down the line that actually you're climbing the ladder, but it's against the wrong wall, to use that very well-worn analogy. Saying no can protect your work and your focus and your energy for the work that matters and that will get you further along the path on your career trajectory that you want. And only you will be able to define that. Succumbing to pressure and simply saying yes now is a gamble. And of course, if people have seen something in you that maybe you have not, that's a very valid path to take. But just make sure you have the support around you, because very often that gamble does not pay off. This is the final slide from me, and it's really just about obtaining that clarity. Before you make any moves, before you apply for any moves, before you even ask for sponsorship for a move, think about how to harness your ambition in the right way. So be very clear for any new role what you would be gaining. Be very clear about what you would be giving up. Be very clear about who you would need to be and whether that's what you want. Because there are no wrong answers on this, but if you've asked yourself these questions before you start applying or before you accept the role, then 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the line, you're going to be in a much better place. And yes, it may be hard to say no initially, but you will find that you are then on the right trajectory and people know where you want to go to. Or maybe you find it's easier to say yes, but you at least know what you need to do when you take that role to be successful, and you are eyes wide open about the fact that there will be a grieving cycle for your prior identity and that you need to build these new skills and let go of what used to make you feel effective and focus on what will make you effective in your new role. Good luck.